Okay, hello. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Hubbard, and I'll be the Zoom host for this session. And our discussion will get started shortly here. This is just a reminder to keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. Please use the raise hand features, which is located in the reactions icon. That'll be later for the Q&A. You can also type your questions and ideas into the chat box, which I would encourage as we go along. In order to allow for open discussion, this session is, let me start over here. Our presenter will get started shortly. This is a reminder to keep yourself muted throughout the presentation unless the presenter indicates otherwise. If you have a question, please use the raise hand feature, which is located in the reactions icon, or type your question into the chat box, which I would encourage. We'll have a Q&A after the presentation, and we'll kind of circle back around to those questions that are in the chat box. Please be aware that this presentation is being recorded and will be available for viewing after the conference. Live transcript scripting has been enabled. You can turn it on or off using the live transcript feature at the bottom. You can change the view by clicking the view icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. We recommend the speaker view, side-by-side speaker view. At the close of the presentation, they'll be putting an assessment survey for this session in the chat box, and please fill that out. So without any further ado, let me introduce our speaker, James Creel. He's Director of Scholarly Communications and Data Services at Texas A&M University Libraries. And he will be presenting on piloting a holistic research dataset management initiative at Texas A&M. So James, it's all yours.
All right, well, thank you very much for that introduction, David. And you may notice a slight mismatch between the title on the slide versus the title of the presentation in today's program. But it's the same material, and maybe the title in the presentation is a bit more specific about what I'll be discussing today. So this is really a major initiative that has come out of the Scholarly Communications shop this last year. And I list there as my collaborators the current staff of the Scholarly Communications unit, as well as our Associate University Librarian, Derek Halling. Now, this also is a recapitulation of a presentation that I gave at the Texas Conference on Digital Libraries last month. So be aware that this is informational, and I am not exactly deeming it as a publication so much as an informational presentation for y'all. And I will be keeping my eye on the chat window during the course of my talk here. So if I do notice any questions that would fit with the flow of the slide deck, I'm going to be happy to open up the floor, and we can have kind of a more open discussion, because I think we have time today. Okay, so I'll begin now with an outline of the little talk that I'll be providing, starting with the origins of this project. So, you know, data management has been in the portfolio of the libraries for many years, but it's gotten a big shot in the arm lately with a new initiative being pushed by the Vice President for Research's office. I'll then talk about the motivations in more detail of this new initiative, including things that libraries like to do, like enhancing discoverability of resources, and including things that libraries are here to facilitate with, but are not exactly in our traditional realm of responsibility, like compliance. Then I will look in some great detail about the actual workflow for data management as we are currently prototyping it in infrastructure and in software and in applications as we speak. And then finally, I'll conclude with a brief demo of the prototype. Okay, so the origins of the initiative. Yeah, so as I've said, the libraries have been involved for many years with research data management. We are members of the Texas Digital Library Consortium, and of course we maintain a data repository through that consortium, the Texas Data Repository on the Dataverse software. We have for a long time been assisting researchers with data management plans, as well as data management practices. But I would say that uptake could have been better in these past years. And I would further say that the Vice President for Research agrees with this and has, in collaboration with the libraries, quite appropriately, spearheaded a new effort to start to catalog and to curate research data more comprehensively, coming out of the large body of research that is produced every year at Texas A&M. So yeah, so the VPR's collaboration is with faculty affairs, naturally, those faculty members being in large part the principal investigators on research projects and the producers of the data sets. Technology services to provide the infrastructure and the software support and the applications to enable these new activities. And of course, the university libraries, which are really going to be at the center of this process. So, talking about the motivations, right? There are lots of things that we do well at libraries, providing discoverability, improving the impact of research, promoting the reproducibility of scientific experiments, preserving resources, and then looming large is the compliance piece. And this is the part that perhaps is less exciting, but it's also the part without which we would not be getting the level of support that we are currently seeing. So, I mean, there's been a great deal of interest in the management and curation of research data for a long time, but I would say more than half of the reason for this current push is the compliance piece. There are regulations set forth by the government, regulations set forth by the university system in the SAPs, and regulations in the contracts that the PIs sign with the grant funding agencies. And it's really kind of the fear of audits and the need to comply that has brought a certain urgency to research data management writ large at the university today. So whereas compliance is not the responsibility of the libraries per se, we will provide the advice and we will manage the infrastructure that's going to allow the VPR's office to do that kind of auditing and that kind of assurance. Okay, so digging a little bit deeper into the various components that we are endeavoring to provide with this new initiative. So on the discoverability side, and one of the things that libraries do best, right? So providing metadata for the records, basic obvious metadata, title, creator, that sort of thing. Discipline-based metadata, which is going to be vocabularies that are relevant to various different fields. Subject metadata, that's going to enhance discoverability. And then particular to data sets, there's the format of the data or the means of processing the data. A stream of bits can mean a lot of different things, and without context and without references to software relevant to the data, it's not much use. Search engine optimization is another requirement that we're good at providing and that the VPR has asked for. So we can achieve this in any number of our web interfaces with HTML meta tags, with sitemaps, and we basically want to spoon feed the major search engines the metadata they like in the format that they want to have it. So playing ball on that front. Now, doing a good job in discoverability, of course, is going to feed then into increased impact as these objects get more widely disseminated. So yeah, wider dissemination will improve research impact. It's going to additionally enhance researchers' ability to find collaborators in other fields. So the metadata, looking for disciplinary-based metadata, looking for subject-based metadata, it's going to, I think, facilitate this cross-pollination. People will be able to find what other PIs in their field are up to. And then also there are the concerns about promotion and tenure. This is a bigger deal that the libraries are going to, try to help out with, but it's also going to be a wider cultural change in the university. And I do think that the VPR is going to have to work with faculty affairs, work with deans, work with department heads to bring data sets up to a par with publications as part of the scholarly oeuvre. So now, coming to the next point, improved discovery, improved dissemination of research data is going to help ameliorate a big problem in the current research space. And that's the crisis surrounding the reproducibility of experiments, right? So we predict, we hope, that making data sets more widely available to researchers in a given field is going to at least somewhat address this crisis. So for data-based research, researchers can process data sets and attempt to reproduce analytic results. For on the other side, if an experiment has its methods in the literature, researchers can attempt to duplicate experiments, produce their own data, and then if the data reproduces what has been preserved or saved, then this reinforces the quality of the existing data, right? So easier said than done, of course, because data sets are often not extremely well curated, and so there's going to be a lot of work done to encode proper information about how to use a given data set, how to process a data set, right? So, okay, and then we come to the compliance piece, right? And again, this is what has really well, it's half of what has really motivated the vice president for research of late. So a big requirement is that data needs to be retained for specific periods of time. So this is typically 3 years or 5 years or some period of time as required by the grant funding agency. Now, part of that retention is that there needs to be a responsible party for the data throughout the retention of the data. And this individual is, we didn't come up with this name, but this individual is being called the primary data access contact, or affectionately known to us as the PDAC. So, so whatever framework we have is going to have to be able to identify a responsible party for a data set at any given time. Another requirement is security, of course. So not all the data sets can be perfectly open access. The ones that are open access, we want to keep open. Other ones we want to have subject to some sort of authentication or authorization regime, and we need those to be secure so as to prevent unauthorized access. And then finally, this whole infrastructure is going to support the audits that the compliance officer in the VPR's office is going to be is going to be doing. So whereas we will provide the data, including the timeframes, the PDAC identities, metadata, et cetera, to facilitate these audits, there's going to be some added value there, I think, from the library perspective, in that if we are capable of supporting audits, we'll also be able to do our own analyses and visualizations on the collections. So that's kind of a next step here, or future work or something. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but it's an exciting prospect for when we get this moving forward. Okay, so that's all very well and good, but then how are we going to get to this remote ideal? So yeah, there are lots of questions and challenges along the way. So for example, how are we going to get the appropriate metadata, and how are we going to be able to track the data repositories where the data are being stored? We really have to rely on the faculty or the PIs to some extent, I think, to collect this information. And historically, we haven't had a high degree of uptake with them communicating this kind of information to us. So we're going to have to be working with the VPR and with departments to encourage that kind of collaboration. And so then there's also providing the technical support in software for all these various use cases that I've been describing on the previous slides. And then, without further ado, let's look at a workflow for how we might achieve these goals in practice. So here's a very top level outline for what it's going to look like. Researchers begin by making a data management plan. That is a current best practice, although I don't know how widely it's done across the university. Researchers then will input information about their project in our research information system that is under the VPR's office. This thing is called Maestro. Maybe some of y'all have heard of it, especially if you worked with faculty researchers. And that's an existing practice. But Maestro is really more on the grant tracking side of things. So whereas research projects are tracked in Maestro, Maestro does not really do much about the data management plans. It's really concerned more with grant tracking. So a bit of a missing link there. So then, nevertheless, these projects are going to need to be turned into records that we will be cataloging for the research data set output. And then finally, once these things are cataloged, once they're indexed, we need to turn to the reporting and auditing capabilities. So when we first got with the VPR, one of the first deliverables that he wanted was like a flow chart for what it would look like and how we could overlay research data management on top of the existing practices of PIs at the university. So I'm not sure how easy this is to read. I can read it pretty well on my screen, but so the way things go is, of course, a researcher will ideate the research and then make a grant proposal. And we stipulate that this grant proposal must come along with a research data management plan. I think the VPR backs us up on this. In the event that a grant is awarded, then the researcher has to register with the Maestro system, and that is part of the existing workflow. The improvement there is that we're building this expectation that data management plans are going to come along with new research projects. So then when the project gets started, the research is conducted. The libraries are going to be performing their traditional role of advising on the research process. Now, research is, of course, going to produce publications as well as research data. And then as a research project concludes, as it's closed out, then we reach some decision points. So if the data set is restricted, then our role for now, at least in the first phase of this, our role is over. And the researcher will be obliged to fulfill long-term data obligations. Otherwise, then there are questions about where the data set gets deposited. So the data set, if the grant funder says you have to put it in a certain place, well, you better well put it in that place. If the researchers have flexibility for where to put these data sets, we are going to urge uptake of the TAMU data repository, our Dataverse instance. This service is, to my mind, the existing institutional data repository. So I think we have a lot of good reasons to steer faculty in that direction. Reasons such as the high quality metadata that we have in Dataverse, as well as the security concerns. So now we come to a bit of a subtle point here. The research data sets are going to be naturally cataloged in whatever data repository they end up in, but we at the libraries are going to maintain a single catalog to rule them all. So yeah, and I'm going to, if that's not yet clear, I'm going to get into further detail as we move on. Okay, so digging into a little bit further detail on each of these components of the workflow, starting with the data management plans. So the libraries are going to stand ready to work with researchers at the outset to make sure that these DMPs are of high quality and are not only of value to the institution, but to the researcher in the conduct of their research. So it's also important for us because it's going to give us a clue as to which projects.
Do you go to school here?
I'm sorry? Is there a question?
No, please continue, James.
Okay, I'll proceed. But do feel free to ask questions at any time. So anyway, yeah, so these DMPs, right? Of course, it's all provisional because plans change, but it'll at least be a starting point for us to know what data sets are eventually going to be coming down the pike and where we expect them to eventually be deposited, and what sort of retention and security policies are going to be applied to those data sets. All right, so after the DMP phase, researchers do need to put their project information into Maestro. So yeah, this software has been around for a long time, but it does not fit the bill as far as research data curation is concerned. It is really more for grant tracking, but we are going to leverage the information going into the system to the degree that it's possible. So we're trying to work with the Research Information Systems Office to see if we can get some new fields added into Maestro. But we might be able to get a little bit of help there, but it's really quite infeasible to adapt the Maestro system to meet all of our use cases. We're going to have to be using some separate additional services and tools to achieve the aims of the VPR. Okay, so now we're getting to the interesting part to my mind, something that's really exciting to me, and that's how we're actually going to do this cataloging, how we're going to do the indexing of these research data sets. And what we have decided upon is to use a custom DSpace repository. If y'all are familiar with the DSpace institutional repository software, it's a widely adopted open source digital repository solution. And we have dubbed the new service Data at TAMU in sympathy with Scholars at TAMU, which is our scholarly profile management system. So given information from data management plans, information out of Maestro, we're going to perform an IT task that is known as extract, transform, and load to take the information out of existing systems and then create an archive that we can use to populate the DSpace instance data at TAMU. So I need to reemphasize once again a bit of a confusing nuance here. The DSpace repository is not going to store the data sets. The data sets are going to be in the Texas Data Repository. They're going to be in grant funding agency repositories. They're going to be in other government agent repositories. They're going to be in literally hundreds and hundreds of data repositories that are out there already doing their thing and getting a lot of TAMU data sets into them that we don't know about, that we'd like to know about. So data at TAMU is just going to be the records. I do see a question in the chat about the law school being included in the initiative. So that is sort of a question above my pay grade. I would hope so, and I would endorse such, because I think that yeah. So for phase one, probably not. But once this thing gets rolling, I would like to see it provide a service to the TAMU system. So right now, I think it's going to be TAMU main campus stuff. But yeah, I hope that provides a little bit of context.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow. And also, we're considered part of the TAMU campus. It's weird. We're in Fort Worth, but yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But anyway, thank
that's sort
you.
of that's a nuance of which I was not aware. But I'm also curious what kind of data sets are coming out of the law school. That's a interesting one to me. Maybe we'll circle back to this. I think we'll have time. And don't worry about my flow. I got no flow. I'm just doing my thing here. Okay, so presenting data at TAMU. Here's a shot of the front page of the thing. We got some nice boilerplate text there, including a quote from the Denton Declaration, an open data manifesto that's very inspiring to all of us. Okay, and then coming back around to the compliance and audit support. So this platform is going to have to track the PDAC. This platform is going to need to track dates associated with the objects in order to enforce retention policies. And it's going to need to support business intelligence. It's going to need to support reporting, reviewing, and records management for the auditors. So we're coming now to how indeed such is to be achieved. So in the latest version of DSpace, there's something called entities. So everything in a DSpace repository used to be an item, but now you can have records in DSpace that are not items anymore. You can have records that are supposed to represent other things, such as people or projects, or indeed things like publishers or journals. And this allows a DSpace repository to really take on a lot of the capabilities of a research information management system. Now, we already have plenty of software in production through which we're doing research information management. And so we're not going to really leverage DSpace to its full extent in this regard, but it does do us a huge favor in that we can create entities for these PDACs. And so in the very same repository where we're going to be having the records of the data sets, we can have records of the responsible parties. And this is, I think this is probably the best way to do it, because You might imagine that we would link out to records in Scholars at TAMU in like the Vivo instance. However, it's quite possible that the PDAC for a data set is not a researcher. It may be some other personnel in a department that are in like a staff role and not actually involved in the direct conduct of research, you know? So people might not always have these Vivo records. Yeah, anyway, so this is a shot of the interface where you're seeing the assignment of a data set to a PDAC. So it's a bidirectional relationship. A data set is going to have at least one PDAC, and a PDAC will be the responsible party for 0 or more data sets. Okay, so then on the data retention side, so we're introducing a custom date field, a metadata field about the project closeout date. Then we can do some math on that, given the policies associated with a given item, to see what the retention timeline is going to look like. And then as far as auditing is concerned, so for that, we're going to provide custom reporting on the DSpace database. So as you might imagine, DSpace on the back end is run by a database, not a database in the library science sense, not like EBSCO or one of those indexes or anything, but like I'm talking about a Postgres database, if that means anything to people who are more on the library side of things. Anyway, if you have a database like that, then you can do queries, and you can also wire it up to business intelligence tools, things like SAP Business Objects or Tableau or Microsoft Power BI. And I do know some of my colleagues in the libraries have been doing some cool stuff with Power BI recently. So I see some affinity there. But yeah, by tracking the PDAC identities and by tracking retention dates, we have what we need to make sure that these reports can satisfy the requirements of the compliance officer with the VPR. Okay, well, that concludes the main part of the presentation. And I will at this time now bring up the live instance, and we'll just see what there is to see. So yeah, indeed, here it is. Quick page refresh to make sure the page is fresh for me. Okay, great. So this repository has been pre-populated with some data set records that we got out of a service called Dimensions, which is something that we subscribe to from the Digital Science Company. They also run Symplectic Elements for us, if you've heard of that. Anyway, it's a subscription service, and they're tracking research data set output of the university, which is really quite an ironic scenario. The university ought to know what researchers are producing, but we don't know. And then these aggregation services collect information about it, and then we pay them to tell us what we should already know about the output of the university. But I guess that's why we're here, and that's the state of affairs that we're attempting to address. I would say, after all, it is good that we were able to avail ourselves of this service, because without it, we would not have been able to bootstrap the catalog. We, in the absence of existing solid relationships and best practices established with the faculty, we wouldn't have been able to, in any kind of reasonable amount of time, populate this with hundreds or thousands of data sets as we ought to be able to for a demonstration. So, and for the prototyping of the service. So I'm a firm believer in an iterative approach to software development, And I think you really want to show people a service and let them experiment with it before you figure out what the new features are for the next phase of development. You really need to have that constant back and forth and input from the customers, right? So anyway, we can see these objects listed here. They're all labeled as data sets, and we got some fairly decent metadata associated with them. Oh, so this is one thing I'm really wanting to point out. This profile URL, this is going to be a link out to a profile in Scholars at TAMU. So this is good for scholarly reputation. This is good for research impact, having those links. Naturally, it's also going to have, oh, and indeed, that's a link on the page. I could have done that more easily. Instead of copying and pasting, I could have just followed the link. But another link I can follow, and now we get to perhaps the meat of the matter, is this access at repository. So I press that, and yeah, okay. A bit anticlimactic because I can't preview this file, but this is where the data set lives in its home data repository. So again, we're not actually hosting the data set here at TAMU, but we are hosting a record of it, and we are providing access as appropriate to that record. Yeah, so now I'm gonna go ahead and log in here, and we'll be able to see a little bit more. My super secret password. Okay, so now that I'm logged in, I'm going to come back to the top level node in the repository, and I can see we have not only this collection of the research data sets, or not the data sets, but the records of them, but I also have this PDAC registry, which is going to have the folks, and we just have one so far, but here's the researcher. And if I go to edit, yeah, so a little bit of metadata about the individual. We envision that we're going to have a lot more metadata in this thing when we go live, things like contact information, office number, telephone number, that sort of thing, in order that the curators and the auditors are able to contact these PDACs. But what's cool right now is if I come to this relationships tab, I'm able to see now the data sets associated with the PDAC. And I can, if I'm a curator and I know that this researcher is producing more research, I can come and I can add data sets to their profile. So let's see if I can. Okay, so yeah, here I see that already one such data set is associated with this researcher. I'm going to go ahead and click this other one, save that, and bingo, there we go. So now for auditing purposes, we have been able to associate this PDAC with an additional data set. Yeah, I think that really kind of about does it. There are a lot of additional technical considerations I'd be happy to get into if anybody's interested, but I'm going to conclude my narration at this juncture and try to open it up for a conversation.
Okay, thank you very much, James. So, yes, so we've got about 10 minutes for questions. And I don't. Okay, we've got one in chat. What do you see as the biggest challenge in this initiative?
That's a great question, Allison. This is what kind of gives me anxiety. I think we've got it kind of solved on the technical side. Our biggest challenge right now is the uptake from faculty members. if, I mean, I've personally reached out to a couple of high profile researchers to see if they were interested in participating in the pilot. And it's just like radio silence, you know, although we have had a couple of researchers who have enthusiastically jumped on board. But we're not operating at anything close to scale here. If we want to be comprehensive about this, we're going to need a lot of support from administration, and we're going to need new staff to actually do this kind of outreach and to do the hard work of talking to researchers, working with data management plans, working with project closeout processes. So it's, yeah, the biggest challenge is the direct interaction and collection of vital information about the research data sets from the PIs.
Thank you, James.
Is that the right answer? I think it is.
I believe so. I believe you answered. Yeah, just feel free to raise your hand if you have a question, or you can place it in chat. One question I had, James, was about the primary data access contact and the possibility of that maybe changing over time, and you know, who would be the responsible party for making sure, you know, if a faculty member leaves, but then the project stays at here at A&M, or you know.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, David, because that's another key thing that we haven't implemented yet, but it's in the planning phases right now. So we absolutely need to track that chain of custody. If a PDAC leaves a project or nominates a successor or whatever, what we want is to come to this this form here that we're looking at, and you know, I can remove this, and when that happens, what we need is to have some metadata about that event. So every time a PDAC is removed from an item, we need to record that event and who did it and when. And then whenever a new PDAC is added to the item, we also need to record that event and who was the curator or administrator and when did that happen. So we don't have the machinery in place for that yet, but I think that's just a little bit of software development to get us there. So it's indeed expected that the chain of custody is going to develop over time for a given data set. And the best we can do is to keep track of that.
Other questions? I saw this a while back, and it's been developed now. You know, a month or so later, I see more. I see more of it now. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is satisfying to see something work, and now that it's actually on a web page, people can come and tear it apart and criticize it. And that's what we want. We want to collect requirements for the next phase of development.
Just thinking about maybe translating this, you know, other institutions, maybe some don't have DSpace. What if we didn't have DSpace? How would you have gone about? What software would you have used to do this, or would you have?
Ooh, yeah, I don't know. So we're a DSpace shop here, so we have a lot of experience with it. And this is a bit of a novel use case for DSpace too, because we're totally leaving aside one of the major features, which is the storage of the assets, the storage of the bit streams, right? We're just having records and relying on other repositories to do the storage of the actual documents, the data sets in this case. So yeah, so we could have imagined really any other indexing tool potentially, you know, so something like like a blacklight or a VU find. Maybe just like a custom thin app on top of like some kind of index. I was second guessing myself a lot when we were at the outset of this project and going with DSpace, because, you know, we got this DSpace hammer at TAMU and everything looks like a nail for the DSpace. But I've been actually very satisfied with the choice so far, because it does so many favors for us, like having the entities in place to do the PDAC management, having a well-structured database backend that's going to facilitate auditing and reporting. And then we got really nice workflows for ingestion of content and for export of content. And then the SEO capabilities, the metadata capabilities. I think this could have gone lots of different ways. There's lots of repository software out there, lots of indexing software. So we could have adopted any number of other platforms. I do think that DSpace was close to an optimal decision for us. And I also think that, you know, there's big barriers to entry for running big websites, right? And this is, I think, why the Texas Digital Library is such a successful and such a valuable consortium, because they're running the institutional repositories, the DSpace instances for many different schools throughout the state. We're very privileged at Texas A&M to be able to be well resourced enough to run our own DSpace repository. For institutions that can't run their own DSpace, they might rely on a consortium to help them out with that. I think that DSpace is going to be one of your lower barriers to entry. I think it's going to be one of the easier ones to get up and running with, although that's not to say it's easy. Well, does that kind of answer your question? It's a roundabout way.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you very much. Any other questions? We got a few more minutes here. We'll just end a couple minutes early here. Well, thank you all for attending, and thank you very much, James. This has been very interesting, and it's as you mentioned, it's a potentially a very impactful initiative that we'll hopefully see come to fruition pretty soon. Okay.
Thanks for your attention and for the good questions. I like to be able to bring some publicity to this exciting project.
I'll just remind folks, all the recordings will be sent out through our YouTube channel after the conference. There is a link to a survey here for each of the sessions. Here's a survey link going into chat.
Oh, and before we break, Lillian, please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to follow up on data sets coming out of the law school.
That is so gracious of you, but that's way above my pay grade. Like, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm very interested and I hope some of it sticks, but yeah, I don't know, but thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. It really, I'm hoping it's expanding my mind. Thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Well, keep me in mind.
Okay. Thank you all. I'll go ahead and end the recording.